All right. Thanks for being here. JV Hilliard, writer, editor, person of lore. What is your writing area set up like?
So I have a den that has a bunch of books that I stare at all day long and that are hidden behind my computer screen. And then behind me on the wall, typically there's several whiteboards that are filled with my character arcs and plot arcs for works in progress and things to come that need to be addressed. And as a ultimate plotter, I don't take them off the wall until they're baked into the book. So if you can imagine a standard study with some whiteboards, that's pretty much it. Nothing sexy.
All right. How do you get into that mood of writing? Do you have a specific time you do it every day or when it strikes?
No, I mean, I try to write every day for sure. I think that's a big part of keeping pace with what you want to do. But sometimes it's hard. Sometimes if the creative juices aren't there, it's hard. It doesn't flow right. So it's easy to get distracted, or sometimes you just have to walk away from it and get some perspective. But for me, I find talking with other creatives is a way to get the creative juices flowing. They don't have to be authors. They can be musicians, they can be poets, they can be whatever. Just someone else that has a creative bend to them. I find that's been really good. And also music, and this has to be the right kind of music. If I'm writing a battle scene, for example, I'm not listening to Celine Dion. But if it's a love scene or some kind of a romantic scene and stuff like that, sometimes you have to kind of tamp that down a little bit. But so you'll find it a pretty eclectic mix on my iPod, not iPod, my iPhone with the music. And sometimes it'll be like I'll be listening to it in the car. My wife will look at me like, "Why is there Viking music playing here?" I'm just like, "Well, because I'm writing a scene," and it inspires me. So sometimes it comes from that.
Yeah, I wouldn't discount Celine for a war or a battle scene. I mean, it's the slow song with the slow motion or fast action that usually works. So do you have like a unofficial soundtrack for your stuff when you're writing it?
Yeah, there's an unofficial soundtrack. As goofy as that sounds, so
Mm.
Metallica does it. Five Finger Death Punch, Peyton Parrish, things like that get you involved, or things that I've run into songs that have created characters for me because they have a good story involved in them. There was one um, song by Danzig called 13, and it's about in the when you listen to the song, it talks about this character that you're learning about has a tattoo on the back of his neck that's 13, and it just gave me the idea for a character who I eventually called Cell Zero, which is and she was put in the cell and had tattooed and was basically being sold into slavery, but escaped that. And it's songs like that just pop up sometimes, and and you just run with it, and you can see a battle scene. As stupid as this is, like Phil Collins coming in the air tonight reminds me of a dark after midnight battle scene with fog obscuring the enemy on both sides of the fences. And when you close your eyes and you see that scene that vividly, even though you wouldn't think Phil Collins is a battle scene kind of guy, all of a sudden you're like, bam, wow, it's really there. And it's because the song is, like you said, Celine Dionish. It's very slow, it's very methodical, and
Mhm.
it has something to it. So I'm all over the board, everything from classical to heavy metal. Not a lot of country in there, but every now and then I've had some country songs sneak up in there too.
Yeah, country's all right. I can see Celine with the near, far, wide, grand vistas. And then Danzig, that's Danzig's good in the shower. Sounds better in the shower when you're singing it. But
No problem.
yeah, I have
Yeah.
the soundtrack for writing as well. And sometimes when I'm laying the book out, if you're putting chapters in, I'll just use the song title as the chapter name while I'm doing it. And then
Real
it'll
smart.
evolve to something else. But that's the song you listen to when you're thinking about that scene or that chapter. And you might listen to it, more than a few times while you're doing it, just to
Agreed.
visualize it and see what sparks the most interest when you're thinking about it. but I find that thinking about it when you're doing something like running or swimming or cutting the grass, that's not a marijuana reference. That's just like mowing the lawn, I guess they would say in some parts of the country. But when you're doing something that you can have that physical outlay of energy going on while you can still think about other things, it seems to be a good time to think about your scenes, and the music definitely helps, definitely a catalyst.
100% agree. That's why a lot of my scenes come right after I'm leaving a gym.
Yeah.
Just, it just makes you feel good to get in there, and all of a sudden, you're sitting, even if you're on a stationary bike or on a treadmill somewhere, just stuff's popping in your head. You listen to the songs, and it just gets you get the juices flowing. That's for sure.
Yeah. When you take notes about things like that, do you take notes on the phone? Do you have a different notebook? Do you take notes?
Both. So I have a book that I got when I spoke at a brewery a couple of years ago. It was called Brewery, and I thought that was really cool. And they gave me as a parting gift this little like journal diary thing, and I use that. I keep that in my car, but primarily it's dictation into notes on my phone if I'm driving, and I do a lot of travel, as you can imagine. So part of that is, by necessity, and that way you don't forget something. And I'll dictate it in either into the notes or I'll dictate it into an email and send myself that email, and it might have 5 or 6 bullets in it by the time it's done, especially if it's coming fast and furious,
Mhm.
the ideas and stuff. And I just keep it in one place and send it to myself, and then I'll drop that into, the cloud somewhere and pull it out when it's ready to go.
How do you keep those organized if you're working on maybe multiple projects, or you're just taking notes and you're thinking this is good, but it's not for the one I'm working on now, but I'm going to set it aside and use it. How do you keep track of all those notes?
Yeah, part of it is the whiteboards I was telling you about before that rest behind me, right? Like those are the ones where like it really looks like a Sweet 16 bracket, March Madness when it's all said and done. And it includes the plot arcs and the character arcs and the inflection points and where they meet. Um, so that it's all baked into it when it's said and done. And I've seen people use post-it notes. I've seen people, everybody has a different format for it. I think that whiteboard makes it visual. For me, I see where I am. It lets me know where, what I've accomplished and what's left on the board so I don't forget what's on the board. Um, but then I also have just like I said, I mean, sometimes I just have a running list where I keep it next to me, and I'll just open up that book and look in there and say, well, these are 5 or 6 things I need to add the next 3 chapters. Where would they go? And make sure that I use them all because I don't want to leave them lost in a travel somewhere. So I've done that, but I would say that 90% of my coordination goes into that whiteboard, and I update it with I take pictures so I can work on with it when I'm on the road and stuff like that when I don't have a whiteboard, so I can at least see what I'm working on next, as part of that too. And I don't have smart boards yet. I haven't gone that far, into the depths, but this it's worked for me, for the last 4 years, so I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, that's good. Do you stick with, or you start with a like a 3-act process when you're putting a book together and then go from there, and if it changes, it changes, or do you just construct it from new each time?
It's this is gonna sound goofy, but I write the end first. I'll write the last chapter of the book first, and then I go back and write the first chapter of the book, and then I fill in wherever the mood takes me. And so there's not necessarily 3 acts. There are clear inflection points, that you can use as guideposts as you do it. But I always do it kind of reverse engineered, and I've even done it. And my literary associate Bree hates when I do this. Sometimes when I'm writing a story, I will write an entire storyline of a single character, and I'll do that for 4 or 5 characters, and then intersect them, like start to link and log them together. It's not the most efficient way of doing it, but sometimes when you're on a roll with a character and you wanna finish something, especially when the characters aren't meeting yet in epic fantasy, and that's the advantage I have in the genre in which I write. Those books are very long, and so sometimes characters that you meet in book 1 don't even meet until book 2. And so you can write them in separate storylines, but you need to know the direction in which they're going. And so I've done that, on occasion as well, which makes a lot of problems for my editors. But You know,
Mm.
it gets it's hey, that's their job. That's what they're getting paid for. The way I look at it. But I always start out last chapter first, first chapter second, and then fill in the blanks.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of people do that because it's more of like if you're planning a trip, you want to know where you're going and then where you're starting from, and then everything else in the middle happens. So it
Yeah,
makes
and
sense. I
it's
like
kind of
it.
already played out in your head. You know the story anyway. So by you being able to write that last scene, it sets a benchmark. Like it's already written in stone, for lack of a better term. And you're right, and you can write toward that, and that
Yeah.
helps me.
Yeah. It's that thing that keeps you motivated too, because you're like, I really like this ending. I want to get to it. How do I get to it the best way? And then with
That's
doing
right.
the characters that way of having their own story going on and then putting them together, I like that. I think that's what most people do when they're thinking about it. They just might not write it down. So writing down, it might be the more expeditious way of getting it done, where you can have it out there, especially if you're putting it on a note on a board or something where you can see it and you can go, oh, this person here and this person here. Another way to keep yourself motivated as a writer because you're waiting for that time where these two characters share the same scene. That's good.
Yeah, and you're right, and you get excited about those are the fun ones to write. Sometimes that filler is the tough part, where you're getting them there, or the dialogue to get them there. Like you know what they're going to do and how they're going to react, but then writing a dialogue around it or putting them in the right place to make it interesting for the reader is important too. And so, that can be, you're just punching through a paper bag on that stuff. But the other stuff, like that's right, those exciting scenes are the ones you want to write. And you get excited about putting that on paper. And sometimes when you do, it's uh, you realize that it's not good enough, and something else has to change, and you go back and edit it. And as part of the editing process, you add to it, or you take from it, or you change it as part of it, and you realize, oh, this is a much better ending, or this is a great way, for me to start off a book, because I think that whether it's in prologue form or chapter one form, um, you have to catch that reader, right? You've got to catch them and get them to keep turning those pages. And so that's got to be something that's going to be an eye popper and a page turner. And so I look for that. And when they get done with the book, you want them to say, when's the next, right? And so you want to leave them with that too. You don't want it to be a summation of what's happened, or, you know, where you're bringing them down. You want to leave them on a high.
Yeah, if you're not excited about writing it, nobody's going to be excited about reading it for sure.
Right.
I can't remember
Right.
the is one of the classics quote was no emotion in the writer, no emotion in the reader, something like that. Can't
Whoever
remember who
said that
said
was
that.
pretty wise.
It was like a Thoreau
I can't
time
take credit for
frame,
that one.
maybe not Thoreau.
Yep.
Yeah. How long does it take you to develop your character usually to the point where you can see that personality coming out to I would say the time where you know the character is different from other people because they would act differently in a situation than another character would.
Yeah, I also think that the answer there is when you're writing the character and you recognize that you've written something for them that's out of character, right? And they're like, well, that
Mm,
person wouldn't do that, right? And sometimes you can get caught up. Beta readers are good at catching that, right? Or development editors are like, this isn't how I envisioned this character making a decision. Why did you jump from left to right? And then you realize there you might have made some mistakes. But I think that you could start the basis of building their personality within that first scene, but it does take some time to develop it as people get to learn who they are, and you show it, through the deeds or the quests or the adventures that they do in my kind of stuff, where the various scenarios that you put them through. And then people can make a decision for themselves as to, okay, is this character a noble person? Is this character someone that's going to, be honorable, or someone that just by their actions you can tell might be a little different, and sometimes you'd be surprised how many times people have told me they love some of my villains, and I have no problems writing through a point of view for a villain, because I think it makes sense in a lot of cases. You get to see through the eyes of some of the more popular but also characters that you love to hate, and I think that makes a difference too. So uh, I would say it takes a couple of good hearty chapters with some scenarios in it for someone to see what's going on with that character. But there's no reason at all why you can't start it off by showing that in the very first scene, in the very first few words, you'll pick it up and you'll know what kind of character you're reading about.
Yeah, I guess a lot of a character is understanding their motivations then when you're talking to actors or whatever and they say the method actor or whatever, whichever one is the one that is trying to figure out why is the character here and what are they doing and what are they trying to accomplish. I mean, that makes sense in a book, especially as you want to understand the motivation of them. And then when they do things, it rings true to their motivation. Hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, I think that that's a real valid point, and it's just one way. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I think that certain characters um, show much earlier than others. Sometimes a character can be pretty complex, and you're in a scenario where someone might be following a redemption arc, and right in the beginning you might not like them, or you may not understand the background that brought them to where they are. And then when you see that inflection point, you can go back and say, "Oh, well, I know why they chose to go down that path, and therefore maybe I would have done the same thing and found myself in the same scenario," and stuff like that. But you may not be able to reveal that up front. That might be part of your big reveal for that character, right? So, some take a little longer than others, and sometimes the main characters are easier because, for all intents and purposes, you're playing yourself through them in many respects, and so you can, as a writer, you're kind of in that seat, and can take them in different directions and stuff like that. Where some of the other marginal characters, um, you can kind of forget. And I always have a trick of the trade that I've used, and this goes back to me being a Dungeons and Dragons nerd. But you can make up character sheets like you're playing a
Mm.
true role playing game, and those character sheets you know keep you stuck to the plot lines and the character arcs of those players, or in this case, the the characters you're building into the story, because you've built them out and they tell you about their height and their weight and the color of the eyes and the hand that they use and their hair and their age, and beyond that, the things that they aspire to be and the direction you want them to go. And it's just like playing the game, and so you can cheat a little bit if you're a D&D nerd, and grab those opportunities and make quick character sheets and then use that as a reference point, especially if you haven't written about that character in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Oftentimes you might be not part of the central plot, but eventually you can go back and take a look at that and say, okay, well, and this will help you keep that character on point.
Have you used a dice roll or saving throw to figure out what's going to happen in a scene? No, never
No, I
mind.
wish, there those people, there are authors out there that can write by the seat of their pants that way. Never, ever, ever am I. I'm always the plotter, right? Like I have to know the direction. I have to know how it's going to end before I can write it. I have a hard time writing things if there's a change. If you said no, you can't have that. If I get writer's block, it's because of that. Like I just can't. If you said roll a die and see if that character lives or dies, and I would never ever do that because in my head the story is linear and it happened this way, and I gotta go. But I respect people that can. I just know my flaws, and that's one of them.
Do
Just can't do
you
it.
do you develop your characters based on people you know, or is it more of just made up altogether?
That's a bit of both, right? So
Mm.
I think that authors typically are observant people, and they might find a character trait or a physical trait in somebody that sparks their interest, and they embed it in a book somewhere, right? I've done that with names. I've done that with scenarios or people that I've met over the years, and you protect their, I mean, you, you're not using their name, but you find a name that fits a character in either that trait or their personality or whatever deed that they were part of, and you saw how they did it, and you either respected it or you were opposed to it. You see those things and you bake it in because it makes the story more real, especially when you're writing fiction like I do. You have to find something that's based in realism that people can believe, and you find that in everyday life. And it's not just characters too. It's the cities that the characters go to. It's the way that they get there, and stuff like that too. So like it could be through magic, it could be through horses, it could be through whatever you want to make it. And I think those things you can take from real life in a lot of cases, because you might have been in that woods, and when you were camping in that woods, that scary story was told around the campfire, or you saw that perfect waterfall, or on the trail you realized how hard it was and arduous, and you can write those kind of things as part of it. So for me, I think being observant really helps to make not just a good character, but a good storyline and embedding those things in, yes. But also, I think all authors have to be creative in many respects. And so half of the stuff I write doesn't come from anywhere except for my head, right? And it's just something I thought would be cool. And maybe it's inspired by something, maybe it hasn't been. But I think it's really 50-50 there, where a lot of it comes from real life experiences and or plots that we thought about when something went in our lives left when we thought it was going right. And you learn from those things. In other cases, it's just like, oh, well, this would be a really cool weapon, or this would be a really cool spell, or a really cool bad guy. And that just comes to you in your head and you take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts about writing is it teaches you how to think. And then you start to see connections in things, especially if you're watching shows or reading a book. You understand that there is a reason why somebody put that thing in there, why that person is named that way. Like if you were to talk to someone and they go, I don't know, it didn't matter. I just picked a name. That's, I'm not sure that's ever really true, even if they say it. I think there's something in a name when people pick it. And when you see that in reality, what we call reality, this life we're living, simulation, whatever it is, it does make me think more that, wait a minute, this is scripted. When you get somebody that has a name of a certain thing and in your life, they're this certain thing, and you go, this is how I would write this if this happened. So somebody's writing this, but it's
Yeah,
interesting when
I,
that
I,
crosses over.
it's funny because I've adopted a number of our Dungeons and Dragons campaigns to my novels because of that. Like when you're working with a group as a dungeon master, and for those who've never played the game, it's basically the person that's leading the campaign, leading the role playing that's happening in every scene, and as the characters progress through their group delusion, right? And in this case, um, you know, characters that do stuff, and you just remember those characters, or villains that do stuff, and they come from all over, and you let the gameplay decide how it goes. And oftentimes, as a dungeon master, it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go, and you can plan as much as you want, and the party's still going to go in a different direction and do what they want to do with it as well. But I think that helps. You know what I mean? It really does, because you can see. I describe it as battle tested. It's something that I've already shown to a group of people, kind of like watching a movie in a movie theater and then coming out and telling them what ending you like better. Right, same thing. It's like if I have a chance to play it through a game, and then you see what people did and what they may have missed out on, or what they did that was so well that surprised you and that everybody enjoyed. Now all of a sudden you've got, basically your captive audience, right? You've got people that are that are there that are able to um, tell you what's good and what's bad and what they liked and what they didn't like, and then you can take the good stuff and memorialize it in a novel.
Yeah. How much collaboration writing have you done besides the thinking about campaigns or dealing with an editor? Have you ever done or written a book or anything with somebody else where you're both writing parts of it?
Yeah, in fact, I'm in the process of doing that right now. So my literary associate and I are adapting, I should say, a novel that I had originally released through Kindle Vella, and it's a young adult fantasy series that we're going to re-release with a little bit more meat on the bone than Velo really often allows for. Um, Hopefully, making it a three-part series, and I'm doing that right now. And I would say that most authors do that. I think authorship is really a team sport, and whether it's from my nerdy Dungeons and Dragons group or other authors, like I belong to several author groups that I meet with once a month religiously. I read their stuff, they read mine. We're typically not in the same genre, and so therefore I'm reading romance, I'm reading horror, I'm reading sci-fi, and it's stuff that I would ask questions about. And I think that kind of stuff helps too, because now you're getting feedback from other authors, just not other readers, and they're telling you where they've had pitfalls and where they've gotten good or bad response to things that they've done. I think all those things help you too. So yeah, I mean, I think that authorship is really a team sport.
So then with the one you're adapting now, you've written it and the other person is coming in and writing more to it or changing it around?
That's right. So, the vast majority of the story and the plot is written through part one of what will be a part three series. She's coming in because she was my editor, and she's had some other ideas to build around it and make it better. So we're now combining chapters, we're dropping chapters, we're making things a little longer where they need to be, as we're now taking a story that was designed over 36 episodes at one point that were no more than 1,500 words at all, and now building a book out of it. So there's a lot of things that hit the cutting room floor that we now have to put back in and make it a real
Mm.
book. And that's the fun part about this, doing that too. And then, my development editor, my copy line editor, my publisher, they've all had influence on the outcome of every single book that I've done, because it's important. You want other eyes on it, and you want that constructive criticism, and you want them to tell you what they like and what they don't like, so that you can make your book the best product it can be, in the hopes of selling more and people buying more of your stuff because they like your writing style, and or they like your plots and all that kind of stuff, or the characters. And so some of that stuff changes through the manuscript process, and that first draft becomes a fifth draft, and by the time you're done with that, you've got a much better product.
Yeah. Do you have a like a group of, I don't know if you call them beta readers or ideal readers or people that look at it besides the editors and all them? Like maybe when you get the first draft that you're willing to let somebody else read, that could be the fourth or fifth draft, or could be more. Do you have some people
Yep.
that you send that out to just to get the see what the flavor of it is?
I sure do. Some of them are people I've met at conventions where they've come up to me and they're fans of my books, and they've got ideas and stuff like that, and I want them to read it, and they do it because they're getting a sneak peek on one of their favorite authors'
Mm.
um, works, and they feel that they can help influence the outcome of that. In other cases, it's my Dungeons and Dragons group. In other cases, it's the standard beta readers, and a lot of them I've found because they found me. They've reached out to me online, or they reached out to me in social media, and they want to be part of it. They want to be part of the realm of Warminster and the way the books go, and from what they've read. And so giving them the right to see some of this stuff before it goes to print and influence the outcome of what it might look like eventually if they don't like something, or they love something. And just, I got 9 out of 10 saying this is the best, idea, drop the other one, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's in that for me, that's incredibly valuable. So, and I think that holds true for any author. And I would suggest putting together, and you don't have to have a dozen beta readers, three, four, six, something like that, of people that are reading your stuff and coming back with questions. And you're going to find that a lot of them come back with the same question. You got a problem. You have to fix that out. In other cases, they'll tell you what they like and they don't like, and then you can beef that up or change it if you need to before it's too late. Right. And I think that's important as part of the process as well.
Do you do that, or have you done that for other people too, where you read their stuff and then comment on it?
Sure.
What's
I
when
just had that asked to me this past weekend twice. And I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun, and it's also paying it forward, especially for folks that haven't been published, whether they're doing self-publishing, small publisher, large whatever route they decide to go. They need that too. And it's been done for me, and so I always try to make sure to return the favor.
Yeah, I I understand how nice it is to get that feedback from people. So when they ask, I make it a priority to try to get it back to them quick, because I always like if I send out a manuscript or a draft, whether it's email or in regular mail, when I send it off, right after I send it, I'm like, well, I wonder when I'm going to get this back. You have to put it out of your mind so you don't obsess over it, but it is exciting to see. So I try to add comments based on that, whether it's, if I see some sort of grammatical error, then I'll put a note on that, because if I see it, it's a big deal. So not a big deal like I make it a big deal, but if it's a spelling error and I caught it, then everyone else should catch it too. But I have that, and then I try to do in a different color, like comments or interjections. Like as a reader, if I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, this is getting good right here, then I'll write that, or that's a nice line or whatever. And then if I have questions, I try to do it in a different color ink just so it's a little more engaging, a little easier to look at. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Is that how you do that as well?
Some of that, yeah. Like I rarely have anything that's written out anymore. Like so, the ink color, if I do it, it'll be definitely done online. I'll change the color. Google Sheets, we'll do it with sharing a Google Doc with folks, and that way you can have a group of people looking at it all at the same time, and you see comments next to one another. I think that's been really helpful for me. The writer groups are great because you've got other people of the same writing caliber in many instances that are now helping you out because they see things and they do things a different way, and they're getting ideas from people that think differently than you will help you with your product as well. So, I would recommend them just because, and you could find them. Like I find them online. I'll find them in socials. I find them at libraries. Like they all have writer groups and reader groups, and and book clubs and stuff like that. And people will do that because they love it. It's their passion. They enjoy reading and they don't mind ever doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely different types of writing groups too. Like I've been a part of one that was you just show up and you're writing. You're not talking to anybody. You just at this time and place you write on whatever you're working on. And then after whatever time goes by, that's set. If the one I went to was an hour, then you can talk to other people. That's the part I like about writing groups the best is meeting other writers, strange people. So that's
We
that's
are.
my favorite part of the writing group. It's getting the work done is nice too, and then hearing the feedback is good. Learning how to give feedback is useful, I think, and it seems like that a lot of the things that you do feedback on or see other people give feedback on are things that they're trying to figure out in their own writing. And I think that's why it's important to have a bunch of different types of people. If you can do different genres, that's even better that you get that insight. So you have the writing group where you show up and you write, and then you have the writing group where you show up and read a sample or somebody reads it or people read it themselves and then you talk about it. And then the others that I've been involved with are the ones where you have the information ahead of time, you read it, and then you talk about it when you get there. But what experience have you had with writing groups and different types of writing groups?
Yeah, most of them have been where you socialize your work before you get there. Everybody has a chance to critique it. They ask you questions about it. And I would say 80% of the writing groups I've been involved in are that. It's more like a constructive criticism oriented scenario. Um, I've been to writing groups that are more like book clubs where you share one of your pieces of work. It could be finished or unfinished with them, and they read the whole thing, and then they get together and talk about it in front of you. And sometimes they allow you to ask questions or answer questions for them. Other times they don't, and they just want to give you their opinion on it. So I've been in a lot of different ones, but most of them have been more tutorial, right? Where it's like, why did you write this? Or I don't understand that. Or here's some other things for you to consider as part of it. And we don't spend a lot of time on, like, the copy line editing where you're going in and pointing it's automatic. When you do it, you see it, but we don't spend time when we're together talking about, you put the comma here, or you have to put the
Yeah.
parentheses there. That kind of stuff we, like, leave to you to figure out after the fact, or if there's a big problem with somebody, we'll tell them, upfront. But for the most part, I think that 80% is really other authors coming together to help each other make their works better.
Yeah, writing groups, I think it worth the time. And if you find one that you don't like, then look for another one. Eventually, I think you'll find one that you like.
You'll
So,
find one. That's exactly right.
your publishing, how do you do your publishing? Was it always the way you do it now, or was it different to start?
Yeah, it's been traditional publishing from the beginning. In part, I chose to go that way because I really didn't understand the industry, and I'm an entrepreneur. I own several businesses, and if you don't understand the marketplace, you often will pay to find someone to help you through that marketplace. And I found that was the case with my publisher. It's like she knew things that I didn't know, and for that, I sacrificed a little bit more on the royalties than I would have if I had gone self-publishing or independent publishing. And instead, I was buying that domain expertise, and her subject matter expertise allowed me to get a head start on where I would have been if I was doing this on my own. And even though I think there are parts of it as an entrepreneur I would love to do on my own, it's also nice to have someone there. I liken it to, if if I'm going to be going to court, I take a lawyer, or if I'm going in front of the IRS, I take an accountant. Well, there's no difference if I'm going out into the marketplace of books, and I could take a publisher with me that knows how to get those books onto bookshelves, understands the marketplace, has a list of tens of thousands of people that have bought books from them in the past that might be interested in the same subject material that I'm putting out. All those things give me a jump start, and for that, I was willing to sacrifice a little bit more um, on the royalty side, and that's made a difference for me.
How do you measure success in writing then?
So it first of all, I think the big question is did it entertain the reader, right? If someone walks away from a book saying it was boring or they didn't like it, that I didn't win. So the first win is entertainment. And this is escapism for many people. You're not reading advanced fantasy in the way of epic fantasy or dark fantasy if this isn't entertainment for you. So if they read the book and they walk away and said this is great, and they leave a review on Amazon or Goodreads or iTunes, wherever they listen to it, that's fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted to accomplish. From a business perspective, you want to sell as many books as you can, right? So success begets awards as part of that will help you to promote your books. So winning awards like Amazon bestseller, or winning local book awards where you submitted to varying sources that are going to award you. You're now competing against others for grand prizes and consolation prizes and things like that too. Allow you to market your books better. There are badges that you could put on the books, stickers you could put on the physical books, stickers you could put on your website that helps you push it, and then you can build that into your bios too. The winner of this award, the winner of that award, the Amazon bestseller, the New York Times bestseller, like all those things will help to promote your books. And so I think the answer to your question is 1 and 1A. I mean, did the reader like it? Would they recommend it to someone else? That's a win. And then, am I selling books enough to continue to do this, to make a living, to feed the family, et cetera, and see some commercial success from it?
Nice. And I read on your, I don't know if it was your website or your bio, you were working on a graphic novel. How's that going?
It's different. I in the beginning it was tough because it's a different medium and that I'm used to. And when you write epic fantasy, you're used to describing things, and my average chapter size is somewhere between 5 and 6,000 words, maybe 8,000 words. And in a graphic novel, you've got 8 words tops
Hmm.
in one single cell. You have 8 cells tops on a page, usually four, maybe six. So now you're taking things and what I might be describing to you in 500 words, I now have room for 2 words, and usually they're action oriented, or just a real quick thought bubble, and you're showing through an illustration what's going on because people are reading it illustratively. They're reading it visually as opposed to reading it and your imagination taking over. It's just a different form. And so, as part of that, it kind of puts you on the sideline. And to use a football term, you're no longer the play caller as much as you are, sitting there kind of watching someone else take you're not even on the coordinator team. You're kind of in the background on the scout team, telling everybody, here are the guardrails. This is what you can expect. Do something within this confines. And then they're taking it, putting it in their medium, and you watch them go to work in a different art form. And it's tremendously rewarding, but you have to kind of give up some of that artistic freedom that you would have by understanding that I can't get everything I want novel because there's just not enough room for it. It's just not the right medium for it. And the same thing holds true. I wouldn't be adopting my stuff into that medium and chasing new readership if it wasn't worthy. So it has to start back with my novels, and people have to like them enough to say, "Oh, I'd love to see this in graphic form, or movie form, or video game form, or some other form of adaptation."
Are there different types of graphic novels that does the industry divide them to where you have like I would think a Calvin and Hobbes comic book or a book of the comic strips, and then a comic book, or I think back in the day, I saw a Batman one that seemed like it was a picture and maybe another picture on the other side, but it was a lot more writing than a comic strip. It was maybe 300 or 400 words on a page, and then you go to the next one and it's a couple pictures, but it's like more of a picture book than I would say a graphic novel, which is trying to tell the story maybe through pictures more than words. And then you have the other like Elf Quest, the epic. I think that was it Elf Quest? That's back maybe 80s time frame that are thick books, but it's like a thicker comic book.
That's right. So you have graphic novels are typically they're defined as being comic books for adults, right? So you it does give you a lot more room to drop verbiage in. It gives you a lot more room to put on pages because adults are going to have longer attention spans and they're going to want more. And they might have loved the comic strip back in the day. They just want more in the form of a graphic novel now that they're older, more mature, maybe more wise, and they want to see those things. And I think that's why you see a lot of comics back in the when we were younger. They've now grown into a different era altogether where characters die instead of just getting beaten up or escaping narrowly, and things like that, and you'll have reiterations of them, and some of them can be very graphic, and you wouldn't share that necessarily with a 10-year-old, but you get into that advanced young adult stage, you want to see that kind of stuff, and it's just the next generation of what those fans like to read, right? And they want to see it done graphically as opposed to a bunch of words on a page, and I think that that helps them as well. So, um, from my perspective, yes, you're right. I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can attack it in the regular comic from back in the day, all the way up to something that's a little bit much more. I wouldn't call it much more robust, but robust for the medium. And you're right. You'll find a lot of those that are almost like novel thickness to them.
Yeah, more storyboard than comic book, I think, is what I would see the big difference between a graphic novel and a comic book. It's
Yep, there you go. That's a great
better
definition of it.
art and more description. Yeah. With your working on the AR VR video game, what's going on with that?
So that will launch in 2026. The company right now is in the process of raising money to finish it. It started last year, and it's been tremendous. It's sit there and talk about storyboarding, to use your word. That's exactly what it is. And in this game, you're not just playing the linear version of my novels. Like you can do things out. You could side with the villains. You can not do the quests. You can do other things. When you create your avatar, you can do whatever you want to make your avatar whatever you want it to be. And so there aren't any guardrails in there, and they have to plan for that. And so my book becomes decentralized in a way where I've just kind of created the realm, and there are characters you can go and find, and they can help you, or there are villains you can find, and they can help you or hurt you, and that kind of stuff is part of your quests and side quests as part of that leveling up. That's a really cool, and the concept being AR will come first. And a lot of folks have played, Pokemon Go, and they get what AR does, and it's been around for 10 years now. Virtual reality takes a little bit longer, a little bit more money to develop. That'll be on the back end of 2026, and with the release of that, then folks that are fans of VR can engage in the realm of Warminster as well.
The more you see how that develops, does that make you think more or less that we are in a video game, that we're living one now?
Kind of like the Matrix.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly think that you know, it's a fun philosophical debate to have. Um, I'm not sure what I believe, when it comes to that kind of stuff. But there's plenty. I love the way that the Matrix used deja vu to describe a glitch, or certain things that you can or can't do. And if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. I'm not so sure. That's almost like, do you get a chance to respawn, like in a video game, and go back in as a different character or the same character, just to start over again? Like, I honestly, I don't know. I think it's really cool. For me, it's almost like it's closer to Ready Player One than it is The Matrix, in the sense that I think we're lurching toward a society that eventually will conduct a lot of its own day-to-day entertainment as well as a lot of day-to-day business inside of VR, platform, where you're going to see, meetings where you're not going to have to travel around the world because you can all sit in the same thing. It's happening now with Zoom. It's happening here as we're doing this. You and I are in two different cities at the same time, and this would not have been possible not that long ago.
Mm.
But we would have to do it on the phone, and before there were phones, you had to get on a horse, go somewhere, and do that too. So there's a lot of that has changed, and I think we're lurching toward that. And as technology adjusts to it, it's taking on greater and greater facets. And I can see parts of that being bioenhancement when you're getting, not necessarily Terminator, but like when you're getting cybernetic stuff that will help you out. You see that a lot with exoskeletons you're using in the military, or people that are paralyzed, to have them walk again and things like that. You're seeing some of that, or with the introduction of chips that are embedded that will help to advance things. I heard Elon Musk and a few others, give not a TED talk, but a speech about the use of AI and AGI down the road, and how that will impact us all, and we'll have our, are we all going to be wearing goggles? Probably some form of them in the uh, near term, but longer term, maybe not. So I just I, I see a lot of that stuff, and I echo it back. Like it's almost like Star Trek, and they have in Next Generation when they had the holodeck. Like if you could live your life in the holodeck, would you? Right? And are we living our lives in a holodeck? Because there's a lot of bad things that happen to people in this life. So that's why I'm not so sure it's the perfect realm for it. But like the Matrix stuff, um, maybe that's closer to it. But I don't know if it's possible or not. But it's fun to contemplate.
Yeah, it's for me, it makes whether you call this reality or a simulation, just use those words to mean the same thing. I mean,
Hmm.
the idea that we live in a simulation, that this reality is a simulation, makes so much sense to me. Like the idea that it's created by something. Okay, a simulation is created by something, and all those other little things just fall into place. And then when you meet those characters, that you're like, why is that person's name Killifer? And that's the person that pulled out in front of me on my motorcycle. That seems like somebody wrote that. So it's interesting to see just those coincidences of life.
Yeah, no,
With
I
your
can't disagree.
and then what do you if Ready Player One is a thing about VR, what if the person in Ready Player One is inside the Matrix? Wow. I mean, that just makes sense too.
Ooh, now you've
And
added
then
a layer of quantum mechanics and physics in
yeah,
there, didn't you?
the three body problem that it's
Oh
probably
yeah, there you
books,
go.
but the show was strangely original and interesting to me. That was it's a pretty great show. I haven't read the books. If there are books, I think it would maybe be better. But the show is that's the best science fiction show I've seen in a long time. Just because it took you 3 or 4 episodes to get to the point where you're like, am I really going to watch this? Am I really going to watch this? Because this doesn't make a lot of sense right now. And then it starts lining up. So you got to think about things. And you go, oh. And they
You're
did
like,
really good.
that's how we're getting there. I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Really good
You have to just gut
explaining.
it through, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's those deep things that you're like, that person really researched that, or just how they communicate over such vast distance in no time. Just the quantum entanglement. And you go, okay, that makes sense. I can buy that. So it makes you hopeful and then it's terrifying all at the same time. It's pretty good. And then there's two film theory, I think that's what it's called, on YouTube about the Matrix, where for some time I thought, man, the Matrix, the first three, where they just missed it. Like it could have been great, but they just missed it. And then I saw these two YouTube videos that are maybe 15 or 20 minutes each by Film Theory, I think. Fan Theory, Film Theory, something like that. And it's Neo is not the one, and there's no escaping the Matrix are the two titles. And after I saw those, I was like, okay, it is as good as I thought it was. It does make sense when I apply those things. And it's things that I thought about anyway when I saw it. Like they're never out of the Matrix. They're always in the Matrix, whether they're on the Nebuchadnezzar, whether they're in the human city, all that, they're always in the Matrix. But nice that they could create a storyline that captures your ideas or that captures your imagination and you can think about it for, hours and hours after that. I think that's success for writing and for filmmaking on that.
Oh yeah, when it becomes part of the general, when people refer to the book or the movie or the whatever in real life because something like that's happening, right?
Yeah.
And that's you've arrived when, right? Dot dot dot.
Yeah. The philosophy of it too. There's a book called Like a Splinter in Your Mind. That's a thin paperback, which is probably should be half as long because it gets a little repetitive, but it has some great examples and discussion on philosophy that went into the Matrix pretty good. So, yeah, quite the masterpiece in science fiction. What's going on with your magazine?
So Altered Reality Mag is a speculative fiction and speculative poetry e-magazine. So if you go to alteredrealitymag.com, you'll have a chance to, to see what it is. And it has everybody from award-winning authors all the way down to first-time publishers, their publications. So like, first portal publication for many folks that submit to us. And so you'll see everybody of every kind of range of talent. And some people have been writing for 30 years that have awards that, they don't write all that much, but when they do submit it, it's something that's very weighty. In other cases, it's the guy down the street who has a chance to throw his first story into the ring. And we accept all comers. They have to meet a requirement, of course, to cross over and make sure it's edited and get published and things. But for the most part, it's a lot of fun and it's done for the love of. Like we don't make any money at it. We just we have a couple of you know uh, sponsors that offset the cost of hosting and also just the time that we dedicate to it as part of that. And frankly, it's been a lot of fun in doing it, and it provides, I think, a necessary forum for folks of any skill set and any experience set to come and have a chance to meet and chat and read other people's stuff. And so we get about 180,000 hits a year, and it's growing, and it's just a place if you like sci-fi and fantasy and dystopia and a lot of that stuff we've talked about today. That's the place to go.
Yeah, I was looking at the website before we got on here today. And when you submit something, are you giving up your publication rights to it or do you retain that? I couldn't find that in the
You
website.
retain it. We don't. We If you say to me, I only want this up on the site for 30 days and then it's returned to me, we respect that. If you say I want this up on the site in perpetuity, we respect that too. And so there's opportunities for any and all. We don't take anything for it. We don't pay anybody to be on it. It's like I said, it's for the love of, and people, I think, respect that, and they find a community where they're like-minded people that'll come to submit something that's just fun to read and entertain folks. And some are better than others, but it's always the beauty's in the eye of the beholder and that kind of stuff too. So there's some things in there where I'm like, wow, what is that? And it's our most popular piece, like that or someone will submit something and it'll get 2,000 views, and you're like, how did that happen? I read that and I didn't think it was that good, but some people love it, right? And they push it out and do some things, and so we give away like author of the month, poet of the month, that kind of stuff to have some fun with it and push that out through our socials. But it's a good time and it's meant to be a free forum for everyone.
Yeah, it's nice. It's as a writer, it made me excited about looking at the website. So I think it's well worth people checking out. And that link is going to be in the show notes, as well as the link to your website. Is that the best way for people
Thank
to
you.
follow your work?
It is. I mean, website or my socials at JV Hilliard Books is the easiest way to find me. So if you're on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or X, JV Hilliard Books, or if you're on Facebook and Discord, it's just JV Hilliard. You can find me there or go to jvhilliard.com, and you'll pick up all the new stuff that you can find there.
All right, that's good stuff. Thank you very much for your time. Like I said, those links will be in the show notes for people to check them out. Any thoughts in closing or things you wanted to talk about that we didn't? I know you have a time thing.
Just a thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity, and if I can ever return a favor, let me know.
Yeah, no problem. All right. I'll talk to you on the other side of this musical exit.
Thank you.